Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer with a mind-boggling number, 2.3 million. Seriously, how exactly did a civilization with no iron tools, no modern machinery, and not even the wheel manage to quarry, transport, and flawlessly assemble 2.3 million massive stone blocks to build what is essentially a literal artificial mountain in the middle of the desert? Welcome to today's explainer. We're going to trace the absolutely breathtaking evolution of the Egyptian pyramids. We'll be taking a journey from their very grounded, gritty origins in sheer agricultural survival, all the way to the mind-bending, esoteric, and mathematical theories that still surround them today. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the Oasis of Power, move through the evolution of the pyramid, and touch on mass, shadows, and geometry. Then we'll dive into mummies and grave robbers, contrast that with theories of magic, energy, and aliens, and finally uncover the enduring secret. So let's kick things off with Section 1, the Oasis of Power, from the Sahara to the Nile. Our story actually starts long before the first stone was ever cut, roughly 11,000 years ago. Back then, the Sahara wasn't a desert at all. It was this lush, green savanna filled with massive lakes and roaming tribes. But around 5500 BC, a tiny, almost imperceptible shift in the Earth's axis completely changed the game. The monsoon rains moved, and that green paradise scorched into the deadliest desert on Earth. Desperate, starving tribes were forced eastward until they hit an absolute miracle, the Nile River. When these nomads realized the river's annual flooding left behind incredibly rich mud from the Ethiopian mountains, they planted wheat and barley. They became the world's first true engineers, building canals to trap the water. And this invention of agriculture created massive surplus wealth. We're talking literal mountains of grain. But of course, surplus grain attracts desert raiders, meaning they suddenly needed powerful protectors, organized states, and rulers. The pharaohs really were born out of absolute survival. Moving right along to Section 2. Evolution of the pyramid, trial, error, and engineering. It's a really common myth that the pyramids just popped up overnight as these mathematically perfect structures. Actually, the archaeological record shows a painful, centuries-long process of trial and error. At first, kings were buried under simple, flat mud brick tombs called mastabas, but mud bricks wash away. So, a genius engineer named Imhotep decided to stack 6 stone mastabas on top of each other, creating the step pyramid. Later pharaohs decided they wanted perfectly smooth sides, which led to a spectacular engineering disaster we now call the bent pyramid. The engineers completely miscalculated the geometry, building it at a steep 54-degree angle. The massive weight caused the whole thing to buckle, forcing them to suddenly flatten the angle halfway up. But they learned from that monumental whips moment, perfected the math with the Red Pyramid, and set the stage for Pharaoh Khufu to attempt the ultimate masterpiece. And that masterpiece illustrates the unimaginable scale of Khufu's Great Pyramid at Giza, standing 481 feet tall, which is roughly the size of a modern 50-story skyscraper. It required just absolutely insane logistics. The inner yellow limestone was quarried locally, sure, but the shining white outer casing came from across the river. Even crazier, the massive red granite blocks for the king's chamber, which weigh up to 50 to 70 tons each, were floated on cedar boats from Aswan, 800 kilometers away. They harnessed the immense power of the Nile's annual floods and then dragged these massive stones up ramps on wooden sleds lubricated with water to reduce friction. Just incredible. Next up is Section 3, Math, Shadows, and Geometry, the Ancient Code. Now, these structures are sheer mathematical marvels. The Great Pyramid is aligned to true north without compasses or satellites, and its massive 13-acre base is perfectly leveled to within a single inch. Because of this vast size, measuring its height was thought to be literally impossible for centuries. But the ancient Greek philosopher Thales absolutely astonished the Egyptians using a brilliantly simple geometry trick. No modern instruments at all. He just waited on level ground until the exact moment of the day when the length of his own shadow perfectly equaled his physical height. At that precise split second, he marked the tip of the pyramid's shadow. By measuring the length of that shadow from the center of its base, he effortlessly calculated its true height, using the principles of similar right triangles. Brilliant, right? Let's get a little darker with Section 4. Mummies and grave robbers, the quest for immortality. So why go to all this trouble? Why lift millions of heavy stones? Well, it was all to protect the pharaoh's physical body. You see, the pharaohs convinced everyone that if their bodies decayed, their souls couldn't reach the sun god, the Nile would literally dry up and the world would end. Heavy stakes. So mummification became this morbidly fascinating, highly calculated biological engineering process meant to completely cheat death. First, priests used an iron hook to pull the brain out through the nose. Yikes. Then they removed the organs that rot the fastest: stomach, liver, intestines, leaving only the heart, because they believed that's where the soul and mind lived. They'd pack the empty body in a special drying salt for 40 days to completely suck out the moisture, before smothering it in cedar oils, resin, and tightly wrapping it in thousands of meters of linen. After all that, the body, along with millions of dollars in gold, was placed right in the center of the pyramid. But here's the ultimate irony. Building a 50-story mountain of solid stone over your treasures is basically building a giant neon signboard for grave robbers. Once the central power of the pharaohs weakened, thieves inevitably smashed through those massive stone doors and looted almost every single pyramid in ancient times. This total vulnerability terrified later rulers. It's exactly what forced pharaohs, like the famous King Tutankhamun, to completely abandon the pyramid idea and hide their mummies underground in the secret subterranean Valley of the Kings. This brings us to a really fascinating pivot in Section 5: magic, energy, and aliens, tombs or transmitters. So, when early modern explorers finally breached the Great Pyramid's heavily guarded king's chamber expecting a glorious gold-covered mummy, they found nothing. Just a completely empty, lidless granite coffer with absolutely zero hieroglyphics anywhere. This pristine emptiness has sparked the greatest historical debate ever. As an impartial explainer, we have to look at both sides. The orthodox archaeological view holds that the pyramids were definitely tombs, built via manual labor and ramps, and they are empty purely because ancient grave robbers got there first. However, there's an entire esoteric view arguing they were never tombs at all. These fringe texts claim the structures were advanced energy capacitors or spiritual initiation chambers. They suggest the blocks were floated into place using acoustic levitation, literally sound waves, and were designed by legendary figures like Hermes or the mysterious Melchizedek order. Some of these alternative sources go remarkably far. One text explicitly describes the Great Pyramid as a machine, calling it, quote, a capacitor unit, an antenna system to control the planetary weather system. Wow. These esoteric traditions also claim the pyramid served as an initiation school for historical heavyweights like Moses and Jesus. Adding fuel to all these theories is the Orion correlation theory from the 1980s. This theory points out that the layout of the three pyramids of Giza perfectly mirrors the alignment and varying brightness of the three stars in Orion's belt, a constellation deeply associated with Osiris, the Egyptian god of the afterlife. Which leads us directly into our final part, Section 6, the enduring secret, the unseen depths. To finally solve this intense debate between empty tombs and advanced ancient machines, modern scientists launched the Scan Pyramids project. They wanted to peer straight through the stone using 21st century tech. Now, inside the Queen's chamber, there are these mysterious 8-inch wide shafts, way too small for a human. In 2015, they sent tiny remote-controlled robots up these steep, pitch-black tunnels. After crawling 200 feet, the robot hit a dead end, a mysterious stone door embedded with two strange copper pins. Scientists very, very carefully drilled a tiny hole through the store, slipped a camera inside, and their jaws dropped. It wasn't an open room. There was a second, completely blocked door right behind it. And it gets crazier. Using advanced muon radiography to scan the density of the entire pyramid, physicists have recently discovered a massive, totally untouched void hidden deep within the center, perfectly isolated by millions of tons of rock. After 4,500 years, the greatest architectural achievement in human history still absolutely refuses to give up all its secrets. And so, we leave you with this final, provocative thought to take away from this explainer today. Behind those tiny copper-pin doors, and completely sealed inside that massive, unbreached void, what is truly hiding in the dark?